Well, hello, my couture crafters. Let's get into this card. So I'm using Altenew dies, and this card is going to be the remnants of the other card that I just made. But I am die cutting out the flowers. I guess I got two cards in one sitting today. This is the first time that I've used the Gemini, and I'm very pleased with it. I'm also really pleased with having those card-based templates right there. Those are sizes that I use all the time, so that way I can audition stuff. And that's me auditioning the flowers and looking at stencils, trying to figure out exactly what's going to fit. So I bust out my trimmer, and I think I cut this down to 6.5 by 7.5. Yeah, I think that's what I cut it down to. And this is going to be one of those neat cards. I really like it. It's a little different. Of course, I don't like the traditional standard size card. So mine is a little different. And I scored it at 3. So that way I have a 1/2 inch overhang. And then you just fold it, and there you see the 1/2 inch overhang right there. Now I'm going to take the Tim Holtz stencil. This is a shifter. I think he came out with these last year. And the idea is that you shift it. You can lay down two different colors with the stencil with a little bit of your background showing. And I didn't realize that the background is supposed to show, but it does. So here I'm taking some Post-it tape. I get my Post-it tape off of Amazon. And I'm putting it down on the back of the card because I'm going to be doing some ink blending. And I don't want that ink to get on the back of the card. So I'm really a stickler about having a clean work surface. I do not love to ink blend on my surface and then wipe it up. I mean, I do sometimes, but I just put some paper down underneath so that I didn't have to worry about trying to clean up my surface. This is painter's tape so that the stencil won't move. I realize that I should have done it a little differently, but it works okay. So I'm using the Picket Fence life-changing brush here and Azurite ink by Altenew. See, it just shifted because it's not taped down to the work surface. It's taped down to the paper, but I make it work by taking another piece of tape and taping the tape to the tape. Again, painter's tape doesn't hurt anything. So I'm blending here, and my first experience with these brushes was not a positive one. I had to work super hard to get the color, to get the intensity, and it's still honestly not as smooth as blending with a foam blender. I'm not going to pretend like it is. I'm not going to pretend like I can control it much better, but this time it laid down the color. And I don't know if it's because the first time I started with a super light color. I just did not have a great experience using these brushes the first time. This got the job done, and it got it done quickly. Although it looks like it's taking me a long time, it really doesn't. It's not super duper smooth, and I'm using Nina 80-pound cardstock, but it's okay. It looks good through the stencil. See, I like that. It's pretty. And so this is me shifting. So right there you see that it was open to those spaces, and I just shifted to the left or to the right and cover up what I just did. Now we're going to take the tape and we're going to put the tape back on the stencil to hold it down in place. And those are magnets to the left that are also help holding down that cardstock. This is that Make Art Station by Wendy Vecchi, and I like that Make Art Station. It really is kind of cool. Now I had too much ink down there, so I figured I would just throw some paper on top of it so that I don't make a boo-boo, because these white cards are just the kind of cards that you'll have a smudge on. And I'm working with ink and I'm ink blending, and I just want to protect it a little bit. So I rotated the Make Art Station, and now I'm working the card from the opposite direction. So we'll have a kind of a gradient going from dark to light and light to dark, depending upon which side of the card we use. What I did not realize is how much smaller the stencil is in this card. I wish that makers would understand that not everybody wants to make a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 card. I don't. It's not my style, and a lot of the things that they make are specific to that. I'm like, can there not be another custom size that we can include? If they were only like 8 inches, the same thing goes for background stamps. I can only do a background stamp truly and get a good impression with, well, they're 6 by 6, but it can't be any larger than 6 by 6 without me having to try to figure out how to shift it. And there's a way to do it, but it's a lot of work to be able to continue a background stamp. I would have to stamp it on some acetate and then look at it and see where I can move it, that kind of thing. I can figure it out, but geez, who wants to do all that? So look at the top and the bottom. You see how there's about a 1/4 inch on both the top and the bottom where there's white space. I was trying to figure out if I could live with that, if that bothered me, if that was part of my design. It certainly wasn't intentional, so I don't know if it's part of the design or not at this point. So I'm going to come back and start auditioning my pieces again. I love that ruler. It holds everything down in place. And now I'm looking at the Altenew elements. This is their, I think they call them bells. Is it bluebells or flower bells? Or I forget. The Bellflower. I think this is called the Bellflower stamp set. I think they are so pretty. When they debuted, I was like, gotta have it. I have a pair of sunglasses that this reminds me of so much. It's such a beachy kind of card. My husband was like, is that a Disney card? I was like, why would you think this is a Disney card? But maybe the colors remind him of Disney. Maybe that's why I love it so much. Maybe it's because they're complimentary, but I think this is so pretty. So I trimmed down one of the dies just because I wasn't using all the leaves and it was kind of in the way. I didn't like the look of it. And also, I'm trimming down the paper. I'm taking off the top and the bottom so that those stripes go all the way to the top and all the way to the bottom. Now I'm grabbing the world's greatest glue, the art glitter glue, and I'm going to glue everything down. I'm going to place it down one more time because this is such a small, narrow card. I'm trying not to have any overhang, even though I have a little bit of wiggle room with the overlay or the overhang, because it's wider on the back. I still don't want the flowers hanging over the side if I can avoid it. So I'm putting these little things down here using a pretty good amount of art glitter glue. I could have popped these up on foam. I could have popped some of them up to give them some dimension, but this was just a flat card for me. That Gemini Junior, oh boy, does it cut like butter. I'm cutting blind. I can't see what I'm cutting as it's going through because the blade needs to be facing up. And there's a magnetic shim in there, but other than that, if you can get over the fact that you probably are going to always have to tape it, it's pretty cool. And there we have the front of the card, just like that. Boom. Again, I stamped out those flowers when I was making my other cards, so this one here, well, it's kind of leftovers. Now I'm grabbing these stamp sets by Stephanie Bernard and May May Made It. I love these because they're up and down, and you know that I like skinny cards. And it turns out the makers, they thought of that one. That one they thought of. And so and another reason why I like it is because the sentiment is done when you stamp it. The part of stamping that I hate or making cards is doing the inside sentiment. I'm like, it's not long enough. What am I going to put in there? This one, you get 2 birds with 1 stone. I figured I would just use the VersaFine clear ink because it's sticking to this stamp a little bit better. I prepped it with my eraser. Now let's make the envelope. I like to have a coordinating envelope with all of my cards. Otherwise, why are we even making cards? Why are we not adding a little something that matches? So, white sheet of 12 by 12 paper. And this card, yeah, I think it had to have an 8 3/4 because it was a 6.5 wide or 3.5 wide card. So I couldn't use just a 8.5 by 11 sheet of cardstock, and that's important because I'm not able to blend on this as seamlessly. I was like, what is up with this blend? Like, why is it patchy? That's because this is some cardstock, probably from Michael's or Joann's, that is not the finest quality, but it did what it needed to do. I need to take off the tip there, and I need to take off the tip at the other side too. So I'm just going to pull out my paper trimmer and trim a little bit off. And then on this side, I'm going to trim a little bit more off so that when I seal it, it has someplace to sit, because I'm going to wax seal it because it's what I do. Now, I thought about it and I was like, how can I make this similar? So I put the Post-it tape down. That Post-it tape, I can keep using it and keep using it and keep using it. I can put it in the drawer after it's been used and keep using it. It goes a long way. Now, what I did not realize for this card was that the stencil is shorter than the card edge to edge. You'll see what I'm talking about when I lift it up. Excuse me. So right now, putting it down the same way I did before, I'm securing it to my base. I'm putting a paper underneath it so that I don't make a mess. And I decide that I want this to gradiate from left to right. So the stripe in the back should be the darkest, and then it get a little bit lighter. Can you guys see how splotchy that is? Now, it was splotchy on the other one. It wasn't as smooth, but this here is a different kind of splotchy. I was like, what? It was almost like it was pilling. But I kept going. And it did not take me long to do this. And there we go. And I just ran that brush back and forth, and it was easy. Again, using that same Azurite color by Altenew. Love it, but look at the right. You see how there's all that white space? I should have centered that better had I known that it was not going to go all the way across. Or I could have just shifted the stencil to the left, staying with it. And that just would have been a little bit more work than I was willing to put in for this envelope. So I grabbed the Altenew orange. I don't know which set this is, guys. It's one of the oranges. It's the same orange that I used for the flowers. I used to put everything down in the description bar and all that, and then I realized that doing that makes this a full-time job. I would rather just bring you guys content and create for you all than try to be worried about what exact tool I'm using and what exact stamp color and all that. If I was making a little change off this, maybe I would, but nah. If it's something that you absolutely have to know, you can certainly message me or call me and I could probably find out. But yeah. So I just grabbed all the orange and I started working my way from the lightest to the darkest. Why? Two reasons. One, I only have one brush, and these brushes probably need to stay in the color family for the day between cleaning them. So I did not want to get away from that. So I just started lightest to darkest. And then I'm just blending the edges out a little bit darker. And there we go. And now it matches. It matches perfectly. I busted out my Concord and Ninth script set. This is a great way to pretend like you are able to write in script, which I absolutely cannot. And it's easy. It's not difficult at all to do this. And it doesn't take a lot of time. You would think that this takes forever to do, but it doesn't. And you just grab and just bam, just like that. They used to overlap it just a little bit, keep it in the same color or not. You can do a bunch of different colors. It's up to you. But this didn't even take long. And so I figured I would throw her name on here. I didn't center it perfectly with her first name and her last name. And there's a couple of different sets there. And so I could have done the top part in script and the bottom part in just regular print. And I was about finished with this card, so I really didn't take it too far, but I think it's pretty cool how they just kind of all go together. And again, it doesn't take forever to do this, and it has a couple of little elements that go with them, like a little filigree and that kind of thing. You could really get into some serious what they call mail art with an envelope. Oop, with this right here. And again, this is actually not difficult to line up. I use the VersaFine clear ink so that it's crisp. And I should have done this before I actually assembled the envelope, but you get what you get and you don't throw a fit. So that's that. And then I was thinking, oh, what am I going to put on the inside of the card? And then I remembered, wait, the sentiment is already on the card. It's on the right hand side. And when you open it, you see it. So I was over it. I was like, no, that makes this finished. I had a little bit of removable adhesive there. And so I just rubbed it off. I wanted to see what would happen if I mixed my wax seal colors to try to get an orange. So I grabbed some yellow and red, and I'm mixing it there with a Q-tip in the top right. The red was just way too overpowering. I put a white one in there, two red and two yellow, and that red overpowered it. But it did come up with a nice red orange, if that makes sense. And I really wish I could have done a little bit better on the way that I poured this, because when I tell you it comes up so pretty with that blue back there, it really does. You really need to pour a little bit higher and wait for it to cool a little bit before you start pouring it, so that it's a consistency like syrup instead of like water, because water runs everywhere. But I was able to get a pretty good impression with this one. It's just a wax seal. You can tell that it's not one that was bought or just a sticker on there. I actually pressed it. So obviously, Sybil Ellison will be getting this one. Thanks so much for hanging out with me, guys, and we'll see you on the next time.